2017, the United States Census Bureau estimated that 4.1 million children between the ages of 5 to 14 participated in trick-or-treating. In his book, America's Favorite Holidays, Bruce David Forbes says Halloween is a holiday that did not exist in early America, but has burst into importance in recent decades and is now one of the fastest growing holidays for consumer spending. Why is it that we spend so much money on Halloween? Why do children go trick-or-treating? And where does the tradition of Halloween start? Halloween has always been one of my favorite holidays. I love trick-or-treating with my daughter. I love dressing up. I think it's so much fun. And I've always been fascinated with the supernatural. And I wanted to research this topic to see how if Halloween is actually scary or if it's not that bad. So today I will teach you the history of Halloween. First we'll start with its Celtic roots. Then we'll move on to how Christianity took it over. And finally, we'll talk about how Halloween started in the United States. Let's begin where it all started. Halloween has some deep Celtic roots. It started about 2,000 years ago with the Celtic celebration of Samhain. Samhain was a pagan festival that started on October 31st every year. This was the end of their year. It was their harvest time, and this is when they would harvest all their crops and celebrate the end of the year. And they didn't see it as like this was going into the dark times. It was more of like a rebirth. They considered it a rebirth. It wasn't necessarily dark and scary. It was like a happy time for them. They would have feasts and huge bonfires. They also considered this time the veil between life and death was very thin, and they were very worried about like supernatural spirits, which is why they had these huge bonfires, because they thought that this would ward off bad spirits. There's a lot of lore that says that there was human sacrifices. Most lore says it was only animal sacrifices. In the book Halloween from Pagan Ritual to Party Night by Nicholas Rogers, some of the Celtic folklore hints at sacrificial rites involving humans. The main literary evidence is derived from the classical authors of the 1st century before Christ. These writers decreed the practice of human sacrifice at a time when the Roman world no longer thought the pagans compatible with civilization. These were not first-hand accounts, but scholarly ruminations of the beliefs, superstitions, and practices of the pagans. So they didn't actually see any human sacrifices, they're just saying that they did. But the pagans would leave offerings to their gods and have all these bonfires to scare away any bad spirits. And like here they depicted there's fairies and stuff, and they're having their celebration. And they would also dress up like animals. This was also a way for them to ward off any bad spirits and try to keep them in hiding. As Christianity started to take over in Europe, the Christians attempted to reframe pagan holidays to make it easier for pagans to assimilate into Christianity. They tried to do this with Samhain and move the festival in May, but it didn't stick very well with the pagans. So Pope Gregory in the 9th century declared November 1st All Saints' Day. This was a day to celebrate saints and martyrs. It was very similar to Samhain. They would dress up, but usually only as like angels or saints. And they'd still have like bonfires and feasts and parades. And then the day before All Saints' Day was when they started calling it All Hallows' Eve, because it was the eve of All Saints' Day. And then it gets shortened to Halloween, which we use today. Halloween was not very well accepted in America in the early times of the colonies. They did have some festivals, but they were more of a fall celebration. It wasn't any Samhain rituals going on or anything like Halloween is today. They would tell ghost stories, but that's about as crazy as they got. When the Irish and Scottish immigrants came over, this is when it is believed that trick-or-treating, the start of it, began. Geo Athena Treveran, a professor in the Department of Celtic and Scottish Studies at University of Edinburgh, explains that Scottish and Irish youths once engaged in elaborate pranks. They were the forerunners of trick-or-treating. These Scottish and Irish youth would dress up in costumes to hide themselves from their neighbors so they could pull pranks on them. And this is the early times of when they would trick-or-treat in their scary costumes. So in conclusion, 2,000 years ago, the tradition of Samhain started, and from here, Samhain received a Christian makeover, and Halloween came to the United States with the Irish settlers. Halloween is a special holiday where everybody can just have fun and dress up and give themselves a little bit of a scare. Geo Athena Treveran, the professor at the University of Edinburgh, explains it the best when she said, "There is a childlike element of work at play at Samhain and Halloween. The holiday gives us the chance to look at our fears and fantasies, to dress up like them, and realize they aren't so scary after all."